Hello everyone, we're back. It's us, Diego and Emilio. Tonight's theme is freedom of speech, and more specific, freedom of speech in college campus. That's gonna be really entertaining.
Okay, guys, so you know, freedom of speech, it entails a respect for the right of people to speak their mind, no matter how offensive it is. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but it means you have to let it to be heard. It entails speech events not being under threat of being entirely disrupted, nor the speakers being harassed by members of the audience. Its security, it requires to make that happen. Then it should be used. Secondly, order for free speech to exist. There must be an understanding that just became some ideas offended people does not give them the right to disrupt that speech which offends them, not even to speak out against it. If they don't want to do that simultaneously with the events, they should understand that they should do it outside of the venue. Their object, their object to it in such a way that does not disrupt the venue. In other words, there must be a common understanding that contrary voices can be heard. But that means all the voices that are contrary can be heard. In different groups want to be heard by the same audience, they can arrange to be heard at separate times, waiting their turn. Okay, another format that can be accommodate contrary voices at the same time is a debate, where representatives of different groups are on the platform, and each is expected to give time contrasted, cogent arguments for their respective positions, with enough respect that each participant in the debate is allowed to say their piece, and the audience can hear it. In order for debate to occur, though, there needs to be a common understanding of the format. It's expected that opposing points of view will have their points addressed by those who oppose them. I know that it is so-called debates during politics campaigns that the participants are representing themselves and are basically giving prepared speeches in a disjoint way. But that's not the debate format for an academic environment.
Okay, Diego, thanks a lot. Now we're gonna talk about the legal aspects of free speech in college campus in the U.S. And that's a whole different concept. When it comes to the legal requirements for free speech on campus, a key initial consideration is whether an institution is public or private. Public colleges and universities, as governmental institutions, are obligated to uphold First Amendment protections for free speech. In contrast, private institutions may choose to adopt speech policies similar to their public counterparts, but they aren't subject to constitutional speech requirements. California proves a notable exception. State law requires private cellular colleges and universities to follow First Amendment standards in relation to students. For those colleges that are subject to constitutional speech rules, what does this mean? For starters, an institution does not have to make all places or campus, such as offices or libraries, available to speakers or protesters. Universities may also provide less campus access to individuals unfaithful with the institution, but potentially limiting the presence on campus of activists or protesters who are not official members of the university community. Regardless of these limitations on free speech, once an institution categorizes a campus space as accessible for students or permits its use for a specific purpose, such as musical or theatrical performances, campus officials must not favor particular views or messages in granting access. Some campus areas, such as plazas or courtyards, either by tradition or designation, constitute open places for speech and expression, including for the general public. Colleges and universities may improve reasonable rules to regulate the use of this kind of open campus forums. However, a guide First Amendment principle is that institutions cannot impose restrictions based on the content of a speaker's message. Out of that, there is something called free speech zones in private universities in the US, and it's being seen more and more every time. Central point of conflict over student speech and activism involves rules at some institutions that restrict student speech and related activities to specified areas or zones on campus. Students have argued that such free speech zones are overly restrictive and violate the First Amendment. For instance, a community college student in Los Angeles was allowed to distribute copies of the U.S. Constitution only in a designated free speech zone. Virginia, Missouri, Arizona, and Colorado have legislation that prohibit public institutions from enforcing such zones. At least 6 other states are considering similar laws. In our view, legislative and litigation efforts may curtail the use of designated free speech zones for students in much of public higher education. In the meantime, increasing resistance could be enough to prompt many institutions to voluntarily end their.
Okay, thank you, Emilio, and thank you guys for listening to our podcast. And well, hope to see you next week.